Good evening, dear Medyascope viewers. Welcome to This Week in Turkey. This evening, we'll be talking about the ongoing protests at Boğaziçi University with Zeynep Gambetti, an associate professor of political theory at the university. But first, let's take a look at the developments of the week. The week's protests were marked by harsh police violence and mass detentions. More than 250 people were detained in Istanbul this week and 69 others in Ankara during protests. For the past 5 weeks, Boğaziçi University students have been demonstrating against the appointment of a new rector, Melih Bulu, who was given the post by President Erdogan. They demand that Bulu resigns and a fair election is held to choose the new rector. These protests have received widespread support from the public.
Student protests at Boğaziçi University on February 1st were held over the January 30th incidents, where 5 Boğaziçi students were detained for displaying a poster deemed insulting towards religious values. Out of the 5 detained, 1 was released after questioning, 2 were arrested, and the remaining 2 were placed under house arrest on charges of inciting hatred and insulting religious values. The said poster depicted the religious symbol Kaaba with LGBTQIA+ flags. The police entered the south campus of Boğaziçi University, where the rectorate building is located, around 9:30 p.m. and made an announcement saying, as of 9 p.m., the nighttime curfew has started. Subsequently, the police intervened and stopped the live broadcasts and sit-in protests that the students were having, forcing them to leave the campus. As the police pushed students away from the south campus, some students were taken into custody, particularly the ones who were live streaming the altercations. The new rector Melih Bulu, on the other hand, who has been the target of the month-long protests, was taken from the rectorate building, guided by police. While the police made the students walk in line as they were forced out of the campus, a video went viral on social media where a police officer allegedly yelled out, "Look down, you shameless." Following the incident, the hashtag #WeWon'tLookDown became a trending topic on social media. In a short time, hundreds of thousands of tweets were posted under the "We Won't Look Down" hashtag. The politicians who reacted to this situation also used the hashtag. In addition to the 108 students who were taken into custody in the daytime, 51 students were detained during the nighttime on February 1st. Out of 169 students who were detained, 98 of them were released on February 2nd after their statements were taken. In the early morning of February 4th, 30 students who were detained on campus were released as well. The students were implemented with an international travel ban. These incidents were the latest episode of the month-long protests sparked by President Erdogan's appointment of a government-affiliated new rector, Melih Bulu, to Boğaziçi University, one of Turkey's top educational institutions. Boğaziçi students are calling for the resignation of Melih Bulu and for the university academics to be able to democratically elect their rector instead of the government appointing someone outside of the university. Melih Bulu appointed Professor Dr. Gürkan Kumbaroğlu as his vice-rector after 4 weeks of searching who to appoint for the position. Professor Dr. Kumbaroğlu is a faculty member of the Boğaziçi University's Industrial Engineering Department. As the protests continue to take place at the Boğaziçi University campus, many people from different cities and districts showed support for student demonstrators. Demonstrations were also held in Istanbul's Kadıköy district and in the nation's capital, Ankara. During these demonstrations that took place on February 2nd, police intervened with tear gas and rubber bullets in Kadıköy, taking some of them into custody. The demonstrations in Ankara were also resulted in police intervention, where protesters clashed with Turkish security forces and some were detained as well.
The government's handling of the protests through hate speech, police intervention, and the detention of students has received harsh criticism from opposition parties and from US and European officials.
In response to the detention of students in relation to the display of a poster deemed insulting to religious values for having LGBTQI+ flags alongside the Kaaba, the building at the center of the Great Mosque in Mecca, the most sacred site in Islam, Turkey's Interior Minister Süleyman Soylu tweeted, "4 LGBT perverts have been detained for disrespecting the Kaaba." Soylu's tweet was flagged by Twitter for violating the platform's policies on hateful conduct in Turkey, and was banned in France for being unlawful under French law. Over this, Boğaziçi University students shared a video on February 1st through their official Twitter accounts, explaining that their main goal was to oppose the anti-democratic appointment to the university and to practice freedom of thought, but never intended to offend public values. On February 3rd, during the video address he gave to party members, Erdogan denounced student protesters as terrorists and said that the government will not allow mass anti-government protests. While calling on the Boğaziçi student protesters, Erdogan said, "Are you students or are you terrorists who try to raid the rector's office and occupy it? I do not accept these youngsters, who are members of terrorist groups, as sharing our country's national and moral values. This country won't be a country dominated by terrorists. We will never allow it. This country won't relive incidents such as the Gezi events at Taksim," he said, adding that LGBT values have no place in Turkey. In accordance, MHP chair and Erdogan's ally in the People's Alliance, Devlet Bahçeli, made very harsh statements while calling on the protesters, as he used the words "poisonous snakes whose heads must be crushed" on his Twitter account. In addition, he referred to them as vandals and barbarians that should be stopped by whatever means necessary. Several opposition party members have criticized the government's response to the ongoing protests. The CHP chair, Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, called on Melih Bulu on February 2nd by posting a video on his Twitter account, reiterating his call for Bulu to resign and to put an end to this ugly situation. "We are faced with a political power holder that has lost his control. It is feeding on tension. I am making an open call to the government. Release the children of Turkey and put an end to this tension that you have created," Kılıçdaroğlu said. The Ankara mayor Mansur Yavaş urged Melih Bulu to resign in an open letter he wrote and posted on his social media account with the following statement: "If there must be a sacrifice, sacrifice your position instead of sacrificing academic peace, the youth, and our future." The Istanbul Metropolitan Mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu, who has been advocating for Boğaziçi students, met with a group of students through an online meeting and listened to their demands. Muharrem İnce, who parted his ways with CHP and announced the establishment of a new party, visited the student protesters at the university campus on February 4th, saying that, "I will always stand with you. I call all the political party leaders to Boğaziçi. These students are only expressing their request for democracy." The protests and detentions drew reactions from the international audiences as well. On February 3rd, the U.S. Senate Department spokesperson Ned Price said that the United States is concerned about demonstrations at the Turkish university and condemns the anti-LGBTQ rhetoric surrounding them. In accordance, Kati Piri, a European Parliament member and former Turkey rapporteur of the European Parliament, voiced her support to Boğaziçi students with the following statement through Twitter on February 2nd. "Turkish government's tyranny now turns against students of Boğaziçi University. Many are being arrested for peacefully protesting against the government-appointed rector." In response to the international reactions, the Turkish government condemned the strong criticisms, saying that no one has the right to interfere with the internal affairs of Turkey. On February 4th, the Turkish Foreign Ministry stated that it is in no one's limit to attempt to interfere with Turkey's internal affairs. "We warn those circles not to use a language that provokes groups that resort to illegal means and encourages illegal acts," the ministry stated.
Kati Piri, the former Turkey rapporteur of the European Parliament and the current vice chair of the group of Progressive Alliance of Socialists and Democrats in the European Parliament, was the guest of Işın Eliçin this week. The Boğaziçi protests were also addressed during the interview. Here is what Kati Piri had to say on the government's handling of the ongoing protests.
Well, I think everyone in Turkey has seen how the government handled the protests, not only in Turkey, but the pictures went all around the world. What we see with the appointment of a rector is a clear violation of academic freedom. What we see with the way that the protesting students are being molested by the police is actually a clear violation of the right to peacefully demonstrate. So unfortunately, this, of course, always again tainted the image of Turkey. This crackdown, all the violence that we saw being used against the students, but also the unacceptable, really unacceptable words that were used and are being used still today. I just heard what Mr. Bahçeli called the students snakes. We heard the statement by Minister Soylu talking about LGBTI. These are really disrespectful words to use against students who have the right to demonstrate, who have the right to be very, very angry about the fact that to their university there is a politically appointed rector. So that was what my tweet was about, to also show the solidarity as a member of parliament with the students.
This evening, our guest is Zeynep Gambetti, an associate professor of political theory at Boğaziçi University.
Hello, Ms. Gambetti. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today amid your ongoing protests and the tough week you left behind.
Thank you very much for your interest in this.
So first, I'd like to ask you how you are doing. You've been protesting for a month now. This week especially was marred with police brutality and the prosecution of your students. 2 have been arrested. How are you? How is the morale on campus? And how will the developments of this week affect your protests to come?
Yes, we've been protesting for 5 weeks straight, since the 1st of January. And you can imagine how tired and exhausted we are. And then last Friday with the arrest of 2 of our students because of the exhibition where there was this painting of the Kaaba with gay flags on all 4 corners. There was a turning point in the whole protest movement, in that, of course, it became a question of protecting the students and sort of protesting against the police violence as well, not just against the appointment of the rector. And with the ongoing attacks, social media trolls attacking us, but not only that, the government, starting with the head of the religious affairs department, then the interior minister, and then up to the president, the whole establishment attacking us and labeling us terrorists and our students terrorists. This has taken a pretty wild turn. So for a week, we were devastated. We were actually devastated. But you know what? I mean, I think there is another sort of energy also that keeps us going day after day. I mean, 5 full weeks. I'm talking about 7 days a week. We are nonstop organizing protests and resisting. But there is a sort of energy that makes us get up in the morning and clutch our phones the first thing in the morning without even opening our eyes, you know, because we are sure that we are doing the right thing and we are fighting for our principles. So exhausted, but still somehow full of energy. That's what I can say.
Well, these protests are actually a rare instance of specifically students taking on a political stance in such great numbers. I mean, there are obviously other examples in recent years, for example, it's Metu and so forth. But many, I feel, step back from voicing political opinions that may be contrary to the rhetoric of the government. And yet it seems here that, you know, courage is contagious and many have joined in solidarity. The protests are really well organized. It seems the students have divided the work, whether it's on the grounds or on social media platforms and so forth. So do you feel like this is a Boğaziçi specific protest at this point, specific to one event, or do you feel like there's a growing, you know, social movement in relation to the support that you've received?
Yes, no, I think this protest is moving way beyond Boğaziçi. And it's rightly so, because as you know, the university system was devastated since I think it was before the failed putsch in 2016 that the devastation of the university system began with the criminalization of professors sort of protesting against the use of military force in the southeastern provinces, where the Kurdish movement was sort of protesting the government's repression. So since 2015, but majorly through beginning with 2016 failed putsch and the emergency law that was installed to fight against the coup plotters. The university system is being devastated. We have had professors who fled on exile. who were evacuated from the universities, who found themselves being banned from teaching or taking up a position in public universities. And of course, the students have been affected. Students have been arrested, are being arrested in the hundreds since 4 or 5 years in this country. And I think, of course, the events, the last events, the sort of spread of the movement was sparked by a protest at Boğaziçi University by students of the detention and arrest of their fellow colleagues, students previously. But this has grown into a much wider movement. And I think courage is contagious, as you say. But also, I think Boğaziçi has become a symbol that is filled in or becomes an excuse or a mode of expressing other discontents. So it has moved beyond itself. Boğaziçi, the struggle for Boğaziçi is the struggle for universities, university autonomy, but not only that, it is a struggle against a system that is growing more and more authoritarian. It is against a system that is sort of monopolizing political violence and power in the hands of a single party, and within that party in the hands of a single leader. It is a protest against the growing economic problems that are being covered up by the sort of fueling of nationalistic animosity by this popular authoritarian government and establishment. It is a protest against the growing use of social media trolls and the creation of an environment of post-truth. The use of the word terrorist to label and criminalize all sorts of opposition and critique, and all sorts of righteous protest movements. And so it is becoming an empty signifier, as we call it in the social science, particularly in discourse theory. An empty signifier in that allows for the articulation of various sorts of discontent, starting, of course, from the discontent of students and of faculty.
You've really outlined very well the growing authoritarian kind of climate that has been reigning in Turkey for the last couple of years. So how do you position the role of the opposition parties in this regard? This week, many have criticized the late responses coming from the main opposition parties. Kılıçdaroğlu himself was criticized for addressing the parents of Boğaziçi students, urging them to de-escalate the rising tensions in the country. So how do you evaluate the opposition's response, and how should the opposition position themselves in relation to these ongoing protests?
Yes, I think the opposition has failed to take the measure of what's going on. But that reveals why in Turkey we have had one single government's rule for so long. I mean, I don't think there is any serious opposition that is capable of proposing an alternative to the actual system since 2015. The pro-Kurdish movement HTP had moved on to sort of articulate a discourse for the whole of Turkey and to propose an alternative system that consisted of decentralizing governmentality, and also increasing the participation of lay people in politics. But as you know, that movement has been crushed violently, and its leaders are now in prison en masse. And since then, we've had no alternative project for this country. And I think the opposition is way behind the students and way behind the protests and the demands being made, the democratic demands being made, not only now, but that have been made also in the past, but that are being voiced more and more today with the Boğaziçi resistance. I think the opposition should start understanding and grasping the stakes. The stakes are not whether or not party X or party Y will take power. We need to rebuild a democratic coalition from the bottom up. Reunite democratic forces in this country. And understand that this is a very complex problem. The problem does not consist only in the presence of a single government in power since about 20 years now. The problem consists also of a neoliberal economic model that has devastated the economy, but that has broken all sorts of collective labor union movements, or that has actually atomized the democratic forces with the privatization of everything under the sun. This is a problem of sort of imagining the media, reimagining collective resistance and social movement repertoires, and also reimagining institutions. So this is a very complex problem that needs to be addressed in its complexity. And it doesn't, I mean, I think the opposition should actually sit down and sort of organize series of talks with civil society and with other sort of instances that do have ideas concerning how to go about, solving this complex problem.
As a matter of fact, this outline that you gave has had is having an effect on institutions, particularly universities. Many of the new rectors who have been appointed by the president are somehow organically linked to the AKP. So these backgrounds are important in that their appointments are not necessarily based on merit. So could you perhaps speak about some of the negative consequences of the universities being stripped away from their right to self-governance and the politicization of universities along these partisan lines? I mean, you already mentioned how many academics have been forced out of their jobs, have had to leave Turkey, and perhaps we can talk about the lasting effects of the brain drain as well. But perhaps first, what are some of the negative consequences of the universities being stripped of their right of self-governance?
Yes, I mean, that's a very important question. Universities have been under a lot of pressure for a long time now in Turkey. I mean, there are taboo issues that when touched upon get all of the sort of fury of the establishment, like the Armenian question, the Kurdish question, but also, as we have seen in this recent instance, gender studies and LGBT studies, right? So, or the critique of the military, or the critique of certain forms of nationalism. So there are still politically taboo issues in Turkey, which are obstacles to our facing up to our own history and to our own society. This has aggravated with the ongoing explicit attack on the universities since 2016 with the failed putsch, and the banning of the elections of the university presidents by the universities themselves. As you know, AKP has also created several new universities. So we have 200 universities in Turkey in total now, more than 20 of which are ruled by a rector directly associated to the AKP. And there was a recent study on how many international publications the university presidents had. 60 rectors in Turkey have zero international publications. Normally, they shouldn't have become professors in the first place. Right, the professor academic title. They shouldn't have had it in the first place. So as you can see, there is a direct manipulation of the institution, higher education institutions, and with the expulsion by decree of hundreds of colleagues, with the closing of 15 universities, and with the sort of administrative penalties given to those who stayed and those who continued to critique either the government or the university, there was a massive flight, a brain drain out of Turkey. This has seriously impacted critical research and critical education. And so universities are being turned into some sort of technical school, right? And this technical, there will be, seriously, the departments that were affected the most are, of course, the humanities department, the social sciences department, where the taboo political issues are being researched and taught. And this means a drain from these departments, an impoverishment of our conceptual, analytical, and academic tools to come to terms with our own reality. And I think this is a serious threat, in that authoritarian populism by nature is anti-intellectual. And with the devastation of the social sciences in Turkey, this desert, the intellectual desert, becomes a vicious circle in which the authoritarian populist rule is questioned less and less. And so there is this effect on political power in the medium to longer term. And that's why it's very important, to resist this devastation of the universities.
Yes, and take it out of this normalizing context that it is not normal, and start re-questioning these things that we've come to accept because of the way things are. Let's say we're so used to these our areas of expression being limited that we've stopped questioning it. And I think the protests that have been ongoing at Boğaziçi of yours and the academic staff and of the students is very important to remind us that this is not, in fact, not normal.
Exactly. I think, for instance, this trusteeship system, kayyumluk, that was first applied to democratically elected mayors in the southeastern provinces in Turkey, which were ruled by the pro-Kurdish HDP party. This trusteeship system that allows the government to legally remove elected mayors or elected officials, and place a trustee that is loyal to the government. This system was normalized because the opposition did not oppose such treatment, when it was applied to the pro-Kurdish party in the first place. Now what has happened? The trusteeship system is being applied to all sorts of institutions, to civil society institutions, to private companies, now to universities. I mean, that's why we call this a rector a trustee rector. And so this is just one example of the normalization of these extraordinary anti-democratic repressive measures in Turkey that has been going on for quite some time now. Another is the issue of self-censorship. I mean, today I read this news about that there were 500 students detained over the past week, and this was being given in the pro-government media as some sort of the demonstration of the force of the state. Now we can take a step back and ask whether the state serves only to demonstrate its force. What does it mean for a state to demonstrate its force against rightful protests? Well, it means that the state is giving the message that it will not tolerate any sort of opposition. This is a tactic of intimidation, and it does succeed. I mean, let's admit it. There are people who are in prison. There are academics in prison, intellectuals in prison, political leaders in prison, journalists in prison. There are people that are attacked by social media trolls or by the whole state establishment. And of course, this is intimidating. So it's sort of, we can understand why there is a practice now of self-censorship. But I think, I mean, as you really expressed very well, courage is contagious. And I'm really hoping that the Boğaziçi protests will allow us to get over that, that self-control and express what we think, what we believe is right. I really hope this will be a breaking point for a larger portion of the population.
Ms. Gambetti, thank you so much for having joined us. I know you have to go on campus now, so I won't take up more of your time, but it was really great to have you and to listen to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for asking me to join this.
And now for the coronavirus-related developments of the week. According to the data released by the Ministry of Health, the daily number of new cases on February 4th has been announced as 7,909 and the number of deaths as 113. These numbers have led to the total number of cases to reach 2,508,988, the death toll to become 26,467.
Minister of Health Fahrettin Koca has announced that the South Africa and Brazil variants of the coronavirus have been detected in Turkey. In a written statement, Koca said that 2 citizens contracted the South African variant of the coronavirus, while another citizen contracted the Brazilian variant. Koca stated that all 3 patients were being kept in isolation. Moreover, the statement further indicated that 196 cases of the UK strain of the virus have also been detected in Turkey so far. Koca warned that some of these variants spread fast, calling on citizens to adopt precautionary measures and avoid large gatherings. According to member of the Turkish Society of Clinical Microbiology and Infectious Diseases Board, Dr. Bülent Ertuğrul, like the virus in South Africa, the virus in the UK went through a similar mutation. This is due to the makeup of the virus. It is an RNA virus, so it was to be expected that it would go through mutations. However, if the mutations continue as such, these accumulated mutations will create problems in the effectiveness of the vaccines, especially the mRNA vaccines. It is too early to say, but it has only been 1 year since this virus has been in our lives, and we are already discussing the effectiveness of vaccines for the mutated virus. So this is a menace. This is why the vaccination process should continue at a rapid pace. If the pace at which the virus spreads is rapid, then the possibility for that virus to mutate also increases. So when we limit the number of cases, we are also limiting the chances of the virus to mutate. That's why it is very important to curb the spread of the virus. Meanwhile, during a press conference held on February 2nd, Minister of National Education Ziya Selçuk announced that face-to-face education will resume as of February 15 in villages and that preparations would start to resume in-class education on March 1st for the 8th and 12th grade students in primary and special education schools. In this regard, Selçuk said that there are plans to vaccinate the teachers who begin face-to-face education in February. Selçuk further added that it would be up to parents and guardians of students to decide whether their children would resume face-to-face education.
Ruling Justice and Development Party Chair and President Recep Tayyip Erdogan addressed the public following the cabinet meeting in the capital city of Ankara on February 1st. In his address, Erdogan said that the AKP and its ally, the Nationalist Movement Party, may start working on drafting a new constitution. This declaration comes less than 4 years after overhauling the previous constitution to grant his office sweeping powers. This call was met with skepticism by the opposition parties who question Erdogan's motives in changing the existing constitution.
MHP Chair Devlet Bahçeli immediately supported Erdogan's call, saying that Turkey is obligated to replace its current constitution. Meanwhile, Erdogan's call was met with skepticism by the opposition parties. While all parties agree that a new constitution is needed, the opposition emphasizes that the new one should include the return to a parliamentary system. CHP Chair Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu and Felicity Party Chair Temel Karamollaoğlu held a meeting on February 4th, while Good Party Chair Meral Akşener hosted Ali Babacan from the Democracy and Progress Party on the same day. Both meetings focused on efforts to draft a parliamentary system acceptable to all the oppositional parties. Kılıçdaroğlu said that Turkey needs a strengthened parliamentary system with a strong parliament and a prime minister, as well as an effective execution of the principle of execution of powers. Any effort to change the constitution should surely include a return to the parliamentary system, he underlined, blaming Erdogan for trying to divert the country's agenda, including economic problems, poverty, unemployment, and lack of social peace. Mr. Erdogan has started a discussion concerning a new constitution. But how can he start such a discussion at a time when he doesn't obey the existing constitution? The current constitution stipulates an impartial president, but does he act as an impartial president? No, he stated. After the Good Party and Deva Party meeting, Akşener stressed the importance of the political parties as the main bodies generating solutions to the problems of Turkey and criticized the political environment that pits all these parties against each other. I believe this kind of meetings between the political parties is very important for the societal peace. We have observed that we have similar ideas. We both favor parliamentary democracy, which we call the improved parliamentary system, Akşener said. Babacan added that the two parties agreed to work together to this end. Turks have voted in favor of the constitutional changes in 2017, leading the country to switch from a parliamentary democracy to an executive presidential system, despite strong backlash from opposition parties and critics. Erdogan was elected president under the new system in 2018 with sweeping executive powers that opposition parties described as a one-man regime.
Amid MHP's incessant calls for its closure, HDP co-chairs had asked for an appointment from the main opposition parties. On February 1st, the first of these meetings took place between HDP co-chair Pervin Buldan and Felicity Party chair Temel Karamollaoğlu.
Responding to journalist questions after the meeting, HDP co-chair Pervin Buldan said,
"We started a new program today. This program is a democracy program. We are speaking with political parties on this issue. We made our first visit with the Felicity Party within the scope of our political party visits. Next, we will have meetings with CHP, Future Party, and Deva Party. We will also request a meeting with the Good Party. We believe that these talks will contribute to the democratic unity of power in the country. We discussed the most pressing issues of the country, including the problems relating to the state of law, the economic crisis of the country, and the unjust arrest of Selahattin Demirtas. These negotiations are important for the future of Turkey."
After the meeting, Felicity Party spokesperson Birol Aydın said, "We are pleased with the efforts to end social polarization. In this context, we believe that NGOs and political parties need to take steps towards a climate of reconciliation and tolerance in the country. In order to address these citizens' expectations in this regard, The Felicity Party attaches great importance to talking and negotiating with all political parties. During the People's Democratic Party's visit to our party today, we discussed the problems of the country and its people that need solutions. We hope that the visit will contribute to the climate of reconciliation and tolerance.
3 lawmakers from the main opposition Republican People's Party have resigned from the party after a disagreement with the chair, Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, over the direction and management of the party.
Hüseyin Avni Aksoy, an MP from the northern province of Karabük, Mehmet Ali Çelebi, an MP from the western province of Izmir, and Özcan Özer, an MP from the northwestern province of Yalova, resigned from the CHP on January 29. The 3 lawmakers announced their resignations at a joint press conference in the parliament. We are resigning from the CHP until the party returns to the line of Atatürk, Aksoy told reporters. The 3 lawmakers wrote a letter to Kılıçdaroğlu in the past weeks, outlining their disturbance over the policies of the main opposition. They met Kılıçdaroğlu on January 27, but the meeting failed to stop their resignation. With this resignation, the number of the main opposition seats in the parliament dropped to 135 out of 600 seats. There are rumors that these 3 lawmakers may join the recently launched Homeland movement headed by Muharrem İnce, a former member of the CHP and its presidential candidate for the 2018 elections.
That's all from This Week in Turkey. See you next Friday at 9 p.m. Good night.